Hello and welcome to my Cyberpunk 2077 review. Let's get into it. So I finally digged enough hour into this game to finish my review. And we have a lot to speak about, but before we get into the good and the stuff with the room for improvement and the in-between, let's talk about the launch and the marketing, because it was one of the most anticipated games of the last years. So I will give Project Red credit for trying something new, for taking the risk and making the leap, not doing the next Witcher like you do the next Far Cry or you're doing the next Assassin's Creed, and try to give us players a completely new experience and to take the risks that come with this as a company. Credits for this. But then we have this launch and especially the marketing right before the launch, where you try to oversell this product and try to cover up things by preventing reviews from using their own footage, and fully aware of what was coming, trying to sell as much copies as you can and say, okay, we will take the backlash. And now everything you're now doing for apologizing is, you knew this before, so you lose a lot of credit here. I really wish a company would have the bravery to make an honest marketing and to just say, look people, you waited 4 years for this game and more, and we need to cash in at some point. It's shortly before Christmas, you want this game, we want to hit the market with it. It's not completely finished, we think it's an enjoyable experience and it's okay and you can play it, and we will patch it over the next month. So here's the game, but be aware it has some issues. Now, that would have been an honest marketing, and we as customers would have appreciated that. I would have bought the game anyway. So unfortunately, you lose a lot of credit for trying to covering things up. Okay, so with this out of the way, let's start with the good things and the excellent things. I tried to find a word to summarize the things I found excellent, and the term I came up with is production value. You can see it's like a AAA Hollywood production in terms of music, sound, visuals, and you can feel this. And this is responsible for a big part of the positive experience I had with this game. Yes, I said it, I had a positive experience with this game, I had a blast playing it, but I'm not blind to the issues. So we'll talk about that later. But production value, the voice acting, every side quest has its own voice lines. The acting is absolutely fantastic. I had not one character where I thought, ooh, that's bland. The story is really carried by these side characters. I felt involved into the story. Night City has the potential to drag you in, to soak you up and eating up your hours. So I think this is the most positive thing of the gameplay experience. Yes, there are glitches, I will talk about that later, but let's put that aside for a moment. The visual experience, the music, the sound, the voice acting, the quality of production. So yes, you get an Oscar in a technical category here, like getting an Oscar for visual effects here. Then the next thing is the story. I experienced the story as something very positive. I heard critics, the story is too flat. There's just a focus on one corporation, there's not enough politics, and has not enough layers. Yeah, maybe. If you're deep into the cyberpunk genre already, the story might be a little superficial. But I think the story is excellent told, and the story itself is good. It might not be groundbreaking, but for a video game of this scale, the story is very good. And for someone like me who is new to the genre, who never played something related to Cyberpunk, never read anything about this, it was complicated enough in the beginning to figure out who is who and who belongs to whom. So overall, I liked the pace of the story, I liked how it developed, I really liked the side characters who are carrying the story, and I also liked the role my character is playing in the story. So yes, that's definitely something in the good bracket. And we are talking about an RPG here, so immersion is important. And for me, that has a lot to do with the ambience, the atmosphere, the story, the presentation. And on this field, I can say for myself, Cyberpunk 2077 delivers and excels. Not without breaking the immersion with a lot of things we are talking about in a minute. Which leads us right into the next part, the decent in-between part, with some good things and some maybe not so good things, but overall decent. So first of all, let's talk about gameplay mechanics. When you're engaging with enemies, you have 4 main gameplay tools at your disposal. That would be melee combat, ranged combat, hacking and stealth. So let's talk about melee combat first. And for myself, I have to say, in this type of games, I don't like melee combat that much. So I might be a little biased here. I think the system gets the job done, and there are tools like blocking and evasion, but it felt more like clicking and precision was lacking, and yes, there's a stamina system involved, but it's far away from something like a Dark Souls experience where the combat is really crisp and clear and the feedback is very good. So I think the melee combat is okay, but it's not great. And you can play as a melee character, but it might not be the most enjoyable experience here. But definitely you can shred through enemies and get the job done. So next would be ranged combat. Yes, it's not Destiny or Remnant in terms of precision and gunplay, but I was satisfied with the gunplay. There's a decent cover system where you can lean over things to shoot, and precision is okay. It has some balancing issues, especially automated rifles like SMGs and assault rifles felt pretty weak. Handguns, shotguns were in a good place, sniper rifles, so there was a little bit of a mixed bag here. And once you get deeper into the perks, the gunplay is far more enjoyable. So at the beginning, it's like the first time I picked up an SMG and tried to hit something, it was like shooting everything but the target. But as soon as you put some perks into it, it gets better. And that's essentially what an RPG is about. You start as a noob, not hitting anything and maybe cutting yourself with a knife, and becoming very professional by the end of the game. So there's a progression. Overall, the gunplay was satisfying, and yeah, I liked it. So ranged combat is more in the good part, definitely not bad. Now, hacking and stealth. So some people complained about hacking being just opening a menu, picking an ability, executing this, and yeah, that's all. Yes, I think hacking is a little bit simplified, but it is an additional layer to your gunplay and to your stealth, so it has to be integrated and has to be accessible. And I think if you want to get more depth into this system, you would need something like a turn-based combat. So for a shooter-like experience, I think the system is nicely implemented and gets the job done. It's in the decent bracket, not excellent. But I found it interesting to invest into the perks and get better skills and be able to deal with cameras and the systems and distract enemies and blind enemies and even damage enemies. So there are a lot of tools there, and I think hacking is okay. Which leads us to stealth. Yeah, how to put this? Okay, stealth. It's there, it works. I liked stealth. On my first playthrough, I built a netrunner stealth technical character. And I liked sneaking around, and I think the stealth mechanic itself is working. But here we have one of the flaws of the game that is breaking the immersion I was speaking of in the first bracket. And it's the terrible AI. To use Johnny Silverhand's words here, not the brightest bulb on the stage, and that is still flattering the AI. It's rock stupid. For example, if you are assigned to guard a place and you see a dead body of one of your fellow buddies, you would immediately alert everyone, and everyone would be humming around like some angry bees and swarming the whole area. But what the AI is doing, the NPC is slowly going to that dead body, investigating it, turning the back to you, so you have all the time in the world to kill the next enemy. So what you're doing here, if you killed your first enemy by sneaking up, you just use that body as a bait, and one after the other is coming there, and you can sneak up to them and you can kill them. Even if you blind the enemies on their way to investigate the body, they are still just proceeding as if nothing would have happened. So the AI is not capable of dealing with the different mechanics and the different layers here. And yes, I found that easy to abuse and breaking the immersion. As much as I like playing stealthy, the AI is a big minus. So stealth it works. Next up we have the open world. And again, here you need a certain flow between activities, not being overwhelmed by a map that is littered with stuff, and how the game hands stuff to you, how much hand-holding there is, how much you have to look up, how complicated it is to find things. And yes, overall I like the open world, but it could have been much better. I think the map is just littered with things to do, and the different activities by themselves, I like them. They are easy activities where you just get into it. In the beginning you have something like these little assault points. If you want more side stories, and when you approach a side story you get briefed, you get a call, so you don't need to pick up the quest here and deliver it there. I never felt bored doing this content, and then you're doing a main quest and then you're going back to doing side jobs, and the flow between these activities was definitely there. But if you just open the map and you see all these quest markers, it's overwhelming. The game, especially when you reach act number 2, it's like throwing stuff at you, that you are really unable to miss anything. Now, I come from a time, yes, I'm that old, I can use that term, I come from a time, for example, playing Final Fantasy VIII, where you buy the game and then you buy a book that is something printed, a printed guide, not Googling stuff, and you work your way through the book while you work your way through the game. These times are gone, and for the good. That's okay. I don't want to look up everything I have to do. So there is more hand holding in the games these days. But I think Project Red could have been a little bit more brave here to let you explore things and find things on your own. It's a little bit too much handed to you at once. I would recommend not using the map too much. It's more like roam the city, drive around, get a call, do the side quest, and just look at the map when you need to. This way it works really well. But if you're the type of gamer that needs to complete everything in every quest, and I go from this quest marker to the next quest marker and to this mark, it's a little bit too much, I think. I overall liked the open world formula a little more than the typical Ubisoft formula in Assassin's Creed stuff and the Far Cry series. And especially I find that all the activities I was able to find were enjoyable and interacting. So you see characters from your first side quests later on, and it has a big impact on your main story if you do the side quests. For my personal taste, there could have been a few quest markers less, and let you just explore the city and find some of these things just for yourself without showing you where everything is. I would have enjoyed this more. So it's decent, it's okay, but it depends a little bit on how you look at this open world. Another system I will just briefly touch in this bracket is the character development. Overall, I like this system, abilities, skill points, perk points, and how you gain them. So I think the system is solid and decent, but it needs to be balanced. There are some perks that are pretty underwhelming, like putting a perk point for 3% more damage, while you have other perk points that give you 25% more damage against humans. So I like the overall system, but you will have a few balance issues right now. I have two more points in this in-between bracket, and that would be performance and driving vehicles. Performance, I can only speak from a PC perspective. I made a whole guide. If you're interested in that, check out the video about tuning your performance and getting better results. But with a very few tweaks that you can hardly see a difference in game, you will get about mid 50 frames per second. So it's a fluid, it's a smooth experience. It's not great, but it gets the job done and it's sufficient. Now I'm aware that there's a big debate about consoles. And yes, but I leave that to the consoles player. I'm sorry for that. I'm just a PC player here, and I don't want to speak about something I have not experienced firsthand. So performance, you might need to judge this for yourself, depending on what system you are playing. Another gameplay system that is pretty huge, but not executed perfectly, is driving and acquiring the different kinds of vehicles. And as a PC player, I can say, I hope you have somewhere lying around a controller, because if you want to drive and not drive like a drunken idiot through the city and driving over people, then yes, you would need a controller. That's the only way to get some decent results while driving. Overall, I liked motorbikes a lot more than cars. It is very enjoyable to drive through the city, but again, the AI rock stupid. So they are piling up in front of green traffic lights, they are driving across red traffic lights, so you have to constantly pass the traffic, and that's again a point that breaks the immersion from an RPG perspective. I think that is something that can be fixed, but we're not talking about future promises here, we're talking about the game right now, and so the AI is stupid and the controls are a little wonky. So that's it for the in-between decent part. Let's go to the room for improvement part. Let's stay nice here. The parts that really are lacking and would need a lot of polish. And here are a few systems that clearly Project Red wanted to do something with, but were not able to reach the finishing line. You can clearly feel this. For example, the police warranty system. If you drive over people because of the wonky steering of your car, you will get a warrant on your head and the police will be active. But you can just drive on around a few corners and no one will ever remember you. I heard that there will be a warrant system, so this is clearly one of these systems. There is some groundwork there, but it's not worth even talking about it right now. And if you are heavily annoyed by such things, then this would add to the reasons to stay away from the game right now. Another system that is clearly not well thought out or not finished right now is the clothing system. Now we're talking about an RPG here, and I talked about immersion. And I'm happy that this is a first-person game. Although I personally would like to prefer to play this game in third person. That's just my personal preference. But with this clothing system, thank God it is not. You're looking like a clown who suffered from a heart stroke while choosing his clothing. And that's the whole game. Because of the armor attached to the clothing, that makes absolutely no sense, and you have to constantly upgrade your armor, so you're throwing away the stuff that looks good, and yeah, so something like yellow, pink, underpants, whatsoever. But that's clearly another system. It's not even worth talking about right now because it's just not working. And if you're annoyed by this, one more reason to stay away from the game. And the last two systems I want to talk about, because they're interacting with each other, is the crafting system and the loot system. Now, the loot system itself, I have no problems with the amount of loot you are getting and the little underwhelming loot you are getting. But Project Red, for your customers' sanity, please add an area loot function, because picking up every item, and if you're like me, you want every piece of loot, you want to sell it because you want the money or you need the components, we'll talk about that in a second, Yeah, that's breaking the immersion again. So please, an area loot function. Pretty please. And then we go into crafting, which is a pretty shallow system. And if the loot would be readjustable in some way, that you can tweak it a little bit, like with a certain amount of recalibration options, that would be nice. You can upgrade gear, and this upgrade gets more expensive every time you execute it. So if you find a nice piece of gear that you want to keep, as you progress through the game, it gets that expensive. For example, the first starter weapon you get, it's really a nice weapon for a sneaky, stealthy build, because you can improve the headshot damage even more and the damage out of stealth. So that is an excellent weapon for that playstyle. But after 10 levels, it was so expensive to level this item up to stay on par with you. And you cannot upgrade any other item because it's eating up all your resources. Although I was already picking up everything and disassembling everything. So the balance of the crafting system is not good. And the options you have with the crafting systems are not good. And the blueprints you get in the beginning, or even if you buy blueprints, you have to invest so heavily into the crafting perks, which bounce all your ability points to the technical ability, which is not the most exciting ability you have on your character. For example, if you want to take mods out of clothing, and sometimes you find clothing that has attached a legendary mod. I had a mod very early on with plus 15% critical hit chance and plus 30% critical hit damage. Excellent mods, and I kept that piece of gear, although the armor on this piece of gear was like 5 and the armor I was getting at that point was 40. But I was not able to get that mod out of that clothing unless I invested 16 points into the technical ability to get the perk to do so. So the investment you have to put into crafting to get something useful out of it is not balanced well. So while I think the loot itself is decent, the lack of adjusting it or crafting early on satisfying items, and that you have to pick up every piece of junk, and that is breaking the immersion and the game flow. So these two systems are on the weak side and need a lot of improvement from my point of view. And lastly, there are a lot of glitches. I did not encounter serious bugs that prevented me from progressing in the story or finishing stuff or have to reload the game, but glitches, yeah, there's a whole lot of them. And when I was progressing through the game, I was well aware of the glitches, but for me personally, they don't have that much of a big impact on the game and the overall experience. But that is one of the points you might judge for yourself very differently. So be aware there are a lot of glitches. So wrap it all up and come to a conclusion here. Is it a groundbreaking 9 out of 10 game like a lot of magazines in their reviews stated? I don't think so. I think in a few areas this game really excels in terms of production value, voice acting, stuff like that. I don't want to go through all the points again. So yes, there's definitely some excellent value, excellent execution, and you might even use the term groundbreaking for a few of these features. But you have to be absolutely blind and ignoring to give this game a 9 out of 10 from my point of view. If you look at this game from a RPG perspective, if you like the story, if you get involved, then this is a very good game. I had a blast playing this game, I enjoyed this game, but I'm not blind to the issues it has. If you don't find the story very compelling, and if the eye candy is something that is not so important for you, and you are more about gameplay mechanics and concerned with glitches and annoyed by this really stupid AI, if you look at this game from this perspective, then this game is more in the range of a 6.5 out of 10. And I can totally understand people who judge the game this way. I personally would judge it the other way, but I try to give you a lot of different viewing angles from the different perspectives so you can make your own judgment and have an idea how this game might feel and plays for you. So would I recommend this game? Yes, if you're aware of the issues it has and you're hoping for performance and gameplay balance patches, I think the game is well worth playing right now and you will be able to enjoy it, although it has its shortcomings. If you're more on the side that all these gameplay mechanics matter the most to you, stay away from the game right now, wait 3 to 6 months, grab it on a sale, and I think this game has the potential to grow a lot better from where it started. It can be a 9 out of 10, maybe in 3 to 6 months. And even if you're looking at the gameplay issues, it might become a 7.5, maybe even an 8 for you too. But it will need some time to get there. So, I hope you enjoyed this review and this video. If this is the case, please subscribe and hit the like button. And don't forget, take good care of yourself.